Wendy Smith in studio to talk about the Port of Shelton, and good morning to you.
Good morning.
Had a good talk last week with Al Fry and Dick Taylor on the air. We were talking about ways that they are getting ready to winterize, things like that. And boy, this rain we're having certainly is something else.
Yeah, rain and the wind, and we, knock on wood, I guess, but we were just commenting at our staff meeting yesterday. Ned was commenting that we have yet to hear of any leaks this year.
Good.
So, some of the new roofs and the coatings that we've done have survived.
Oh,
so
that's nice.
That's really good.
That's good.
So,
last week, Patrice and I were at the chamber after hours, ran into Brandon Palmer.
Yeah.
We had a good chat with him.
Yeah.
About all the things that he's been working on. We were talking about some of the work down at the port.
Absolutely.
And all the fun stuff that you guys have been doing and upgrading for people.
Yep.
What else has been going on? Kind of quiet as we move into the Thanksgiving next week, things like that?
Yeah, we're in the middle of our audit still, and things are going good. So we're through, I guess this is week 3, so 2.5 weeks worth now, and going good. So far, the feedback, we had our entrance conference on Monday, and so far just things look pretty decent. They're actually going to be ending sooner than they thought, more based on, I think the gal that we have in there, the state auditor, is seasoned. She's been there over 30 years, and so she knows what she's doing. She actually did the cities recently.
Okay.
And so she's fast. And then she's got a new person she's got to do some training starting next week. So he'll be in. And so having 2 people on our audit quickens it. So we were looking at ending sometime, hopefully right before Christmas, and they're going to be out of there November 30th.
Do you get a sense of how it's going other than we are 2 weeks in or we are 30% through? I mean, are there actual results that they can give you now until a report is ready?
They don't officially give you results, but I think you get a sense of it by the questions they've asked or things that they've noted that they want you to kind of look at. And as you discuss those back and forth, things, that seem on the table and they're asking you to fix, then if you say, well, actually that doesn't, I'll give you an example. Okay. We had quite a bit of assets that were replaced over time. So we had water lines and various things that over time, they come off your depreciation schedule and the new water lines come on. Well, we had some very old items that had never come off that list. So in 2014, we did a big cleanup, and that was one of the suggestions, just verbal out the door from the audit. 3 years ago or whenever. And so we did just that. What that resulted in, though, was over $1 million worth of assets coming off of our schedule. And so that's, red flag. That being said, it needed to happen. So one of the questions from the auditor today, or during this time frame, was, are those, would those be considered prior period adjustments? We think they are, because a lot of them were old equipment that you wrote off. So we may ask you to go back in and adjust your financial statement to reflect that. Well, that sounds fairly easy, but then when you think about going back, it affects your beginning balance, your ending balance, and then that rolls into the year before that and the year, so it starts to turn into kind of a snowball. Well, that's all okay. We're willing to do whatever. But really, in 2014, we had a lot of things that came off because they truly were like our water lines out at Johns Prairie were all deeded over to the city. So that was a huge amount of dollars that took up, so she was looking for a certain threshold. They don't tell you what that threshold is, but we said these assets, here's the legal document recording these. And she said, yeah, I agree with you. So, stuff like that. So you can kind of get a sense of how it's going by the feedback, by the conversations,
Not a lot. It's probably a good thing if you don't hear a lot of, can you find for me this document? Can you find proof of this thing here?
And what typically happens is they'll look at, and they haven't, they're just going to start getting into like cash receipting and, our payouts to vendors, that kind of thing, payroll. So once they start looking at that, it'll be a little more, because they'll sample, they randomly sample, and it'll tell which, pull this file. And if they get in there and they see what they like what they see, then that's the end. If they get in there and say they pull lease files and insurance is out of date or something, then they'll do more sampling. Because wait a minute, we sampled 6, and out of 6, 5 weren't, something like that. So you kind of get a feel for if they're quick sampling and not asking for more and more and more. But it's really different each time. The last audit we had, the auditor was quite new and hadn't done much before, and so it's very different going from audit to audit.
Sure.
With different people and just their skills and how long they've done it. And so we're having a good time, as good as as good as it can be. But really, I think you kind of go into it thinking, is it going to be okay? And it's going fine.
Good,
so and
good.
Speeding along, so that's good.
Anything else going on at any of the properties?
Yeah, I wanted to update. I think last week you heard about an emergency declaration that the commission called, and that was for some electrical issues at the south dock of the marina. Since then, we've had, and due to this radio show last week, a contractor heard that and called our office. So that was exciting. And so he asked if he could come look at the issue and he would give us a bid on it.
Wow,
so,
that's wonderful.
So it all comes around. So that was pretty cool. So I think he was down there Monday and then was going to provide a scope in the next couple days. So scope and a price, and so we'll see.
And that's you mentioned that, an emergency replacement here.
Yeah, it's emergency. It's emergency can be called when it's could affect business. So the Flupsies, it could shut their power, or even those very expensive boats down there. If the power shut down, the bilge pumps can't run, or the heaters, or that, or loss of life. I mean, you've got electrical hanging in the water, the conduits rusted apart and stuff. So there's definitely concern.
And that's what Brandon and I were talking about, that how, normally with the salt water, but then with all this rain here on the top layer is kind of fresh water and salt water.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful.
Yeah. Definitely. So that was kind of cool. That was exciting. And beyond that, I think things are just, moving along. We're still working towards the septic at Johns Prairie, and I've got some potential leads on some property at Johns Prairie that, could happen or maybe won't happen. But so exciting things there. Trying to think of what else. Sanderson Field, we're just plugging along. I should give an update on the NDB. The FAA had contacted us saying that the non-directional beacon is a out-of-date service. You can't get parts easily anymore, or maintain them. They suggested we shut it down. So we said, we probably would entertain that. It makes sense. And we alerted our airport users, and so did they. And they got quite a few comments back, I'd say maybe 8, that of concerns that they didn't think it should shut down. And so what we agreed to do is they officially approved the decommissioning, but the date of shutdown will be determined by the port. Okay. So it's just, we figure when the parts completely wear out, or we have some other, reason to not have it.
And so this was too for folks coming in, and maybe the if any instrumentation may not connect properly, or the clouds.
Yeah. So non-directional beacon, they haven't used those in many, many, many years. I think recently, it used to be a commercial pilot commented to one of my staff that he had to use it one time in his commercial operating days, and really when it happened, he was like, what do you mean? I don't even know how to it's not, the airplanes aren't equipped with the system anymore. It's just an older
one.
But what happens is all the new systems, there's quite a bit of upgrading that the planes have to do. So some of them don't, the money is an issue.
Sure.
Or like you say, if say the satellite shuts down or something happens, on the other approaches, then you're left to be able to, either visual or, so. Okay. So we just thought, there's no need to ruffle feathers, or, we do maintain it. So it does have a price to it. We contract with an individual who does that for us. It's not a lot of money. We just thought, it's just something else we don't need to maintain, then we won't. Yeah. But hearing a little bit of feedback is fine.
Might as well keep it up until it can't be up anymore.
That's right. Then Brandon and I had a a conference call with the FAA, and it was just to kind of, we've talked about some of the upcoming projects. We have the engineering for the runway overlay, and the overlay should happen in 19, and so all those projects are coming, and so they kind of line out all this, because it ends up being different money, different pots of money. So we get our typical funding from the FAA every year of $150,000 in grant funding. This is discretionary funding, so they ask it to be set aside like 5 years back, and so this has been planned for, and so we just made sure all that was intact. And so a couple things we have to do for some of the projects, and it'll be like environmental analysis, and those take 2 years, they told us. So, so different things that will happen, for later projects, for taxiway lighting, and if we acquire land around the runway, that kind of thing, we'll have to do a longer process. But
well, folks who live on the water thinking to do work, it's not just you. Even big ports have to wait 2 years for some of these environmental reviews. It's one portion of it. Well, Wendy, thank you so much for coming on this morning and talking a little bit about the great things the port's been up to. We'll check back in next week. And then we'll have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Very cool.